Hi, today I'm joined with Mad Singers, and today's topic is about how to try to understand the location, whether you could be having someone remotely, globally, local in an office. At what point do you decide, Mads, yourself, what the best kind of recruit would be?
Yeah, so my process is very simple, and I want to take a step back because I actually started at explaining something else first. The goal of hiring people is to get a great return on your investment. Some people they insist on we have to get expensive or we have to hire cheap. I don't care about cheap or expensive. I care about return of investment. If you have someone doing a very basic job that any idiot can do, and if you're paying $50 an hour to get it done, you're wasting company resources, right? So the starting point for me is always looking at what am I looking to get done? What is the skill set needed? And based on that, where does it make the most sense to hire people? So as an example, we've over the last 10, 15 years, we've hired a lot of developers. And for so many years, we hired in Eastern Europe and particularly Ukraine for a very simple fact. They were not always the best, but they were often somewhat comparable to what you could find in the US or the UK. But the price was significantly lower, like very often 50% or even 70% lower, but the skill set was maybe 20% lower, right? So the value you got versus the output just made it significantly more valuable to hire developers in Eastern Europe. And again, some people are like, oh, you can get them cheaper in India, or you can get them cheaper in the Philippines. And I'm like, yes, but the goal is not cheap. The goal is where do I get the best return on investment, right? So that's the starting point for us. And when we first started out, so we had a big outsourcing company, or we have a big outsourcing company, Aristo Sourcing. And we initially started out in the Philippines, hired a lot of people, still hire a lot of people. But we found over time that we got way better value in many cases hiring in South Africa because the price level was only about 20% higher, but just the quality of staff, the native English, and the better time zones to Europe and the US just was such a big game changer, right? And reality is you can find great people everywhere, right? Like anywhere in the world. But there's just certain places where it's significantly easier to find a lot of great people at scale at a good cost. So, but starting out by identifying, okay, what is the role I'm looking for? Number one, do they need to be physically present? So if you're looking for a door-to-door door knocker, you obviously want to hire someone locally in the country where you want to sell. And here's the thing, if you're an Indian SEO agency located in India, that might be an American or that might be a British person, right? So you want to see first, what is the location requirement? And then I really love looking for cultural insights as well, because sometimes there's certain roles where it's just so beneficial to have very strong cultural understanding of the specific country being targeted to succeed in the role, right? So I've had certain social media people where, yes, you can get stuff done anywhere, but having someone that knows, and one of the good examples was I had a client who was in the ski niche. So they were selling a lot of ski equipment like snowboards and all that kind of stuff. And they were constantly trying to find Filipinos who had never seen snow, who had never been on a snowboard, who couldn't actually connect with, they didn't understand it, right? So finding people who are actually cultural relevant is important as well. Now,
Yeah, for
the
sure. I love the idea there where you're not talking about how much it's costing, but the return on investment. So for me, from a personal level, we hire all over the world globally, and we was hiring a lot of Filipino virtual assistants, and I seemed to, and I didn't know whether it was me being a perfectionist and I wanted specific videos being created. But nowadays, this is just only for video editing. We realise that there's a lot of great video editors in Vietnam, and we've got now several Vietnamese that are all part of like a group, and they all help each other, and they're all in like specific like Facebook groups. And there's obviously lots of new AI software that can be used and stuff like that. But we realised that for us personally, that Vietnam was working out to be a lot better for video editing. For our overflow call centre, South Africa was absolutely unbelievable. But also we had some for different time zones in the Philippines. So we've strategically started to try to hire in different countries for different roles. But I'm going to put you on the spot now. I'm going to try and start naming certain job roles, and then
Sure.
you try and name like a couple of countries that you think might be best for those roles, right? So, what do you think are the best 2 or 3 countries for developers?
Still Eastern Europe. So Ukrainians are still amazing, but there's many countries in Eastern Europe where you get very high def quality at still an affordable rate. So you have Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Croatia. I know Ukraine is in a tough spot right now, right? But there's still a ton of great Ukrainian around Europe. So still a great country. Poland have a lot of good developers, but they're typically a good bit more expensive. So they've sneaked more towards the sort of Western European rates, I would say at this point.
Yeah. Social media management.
Yeah, so we do a lot of this from South Africa, right? So we hire all our in-house social media. We hire in South Africa, and we do it. There's some cultural aspects. So you mentioned, for example, hiring editors in Vietnam, and we actually have some editors in Vietnam as well. One of the things, and it's not always super obvious, but if you're, let's say you're doing TikTok videos, the kind of TikTok videos that works in Vietnam is not necessarily the same that works in the UK. Or sometimes even the video that work in the UK is not the same as the US. So it's often important to find people that understand the target market really well, right? So the same, we have a lot of recruiters as example, and if we are hiring roles in the UK, we prefer to have people that have recruited in the UK for a period of years because they have a much better cultural understanding. They might understand the role perfect, but they also understand the culture, right? And in some roles, for example, stuff like social media, that can be very important.
Yeah, for sure. Next role, content creation, like content writing for websites.
Yeah, content writing, again, we love South Africa. They're like South Africans are so that they're so good and they're so dedicated, and again the native English and so on, right? They have a good time zone in the middle of the world, so actually no matter where in the world you are, you can kind of work with them either in the evening or in the morning or whatever, right? So you can make it work. But generally for content, we find South Africa being top notch, right? Again, the focus is not price. If you look at India or Philippines, you can definitely get it cheaper. But again, the cultural understanding, the Western mindset, the sort of skill set of bringing out good content, if you will, we have definitely found that being very high in South Africa. We have had some really good people in Eastern Europe as well, but I just find that native English is just a game changer when it comes to content because sometimes there's a certain words or there's certain things that you just wouldn't say in English, or there's a certain way a phrase is said, and you're like, as a near native reader, you're kind of like, wait a minute, that sounds odd, right?
Yeah. Next role, this is a tricky one. Artificial intelligence. So someone wants to try to start understanding setting up of AI agents, or it could be AI workflows, so like N8N, it could be make.com. Who do you feel at present, from a virtual assistant employee point of view, like what nation are the most innovative, forward thinking? Because obviously things are changing all the time. Which ones do you think just follow tasks, or when you give responsibility and part of that responsibility is to keep looking to innovate and improve? What countries do you think are best for that?
So we have actually followed a very interesting process for this. So what we've done, because we built out a lot of end-to-end automations and we eventually brought some of it in-house, but we still hire it out sometimes. But what we did was we actually went out, because there's a ton of Facebook groups, there's a ton on Upwork and so on. And we often went out with very specific defined jobs, found a bunch of interesting people, and we often got 2 or 3 people to build the exact same thing just to see how they did it differently, right? And then what we did was when we found good people, we tested them a bunch of time, and then we just went out and offered them a significantly increased salary compared to what they were getting working on their own, right? Because we realized that there's a lot of competition in automation, And the challenge you often have if you're hiring people from Upwork or the likes is they're going to keep getting offers, right? Like if they're good at what they're doing, they're going to keep getting offers. So you probably do need to pay well. But honestly, we found some great people in Egypt. We found some great people in India. We found some great people in South Africa. We found some in Eastern Europe. I haven't found a country that I think is super great. What I would say is, again, teaching your team to really define what is it you want done and how does it need to get done. Hiring someone to go figure out what's happening right now and how could you automate it, it's like 300 times more difficult, right? And because they have to get into the process, understand what's happening, like it takes 10 times the amount of time, it's way more difficult. Whereas you actually lower the requirement of the skill set from the individual you're hiring if someone can go to them with a good determination of this is what needs done.
Yeah, for sure. And if they're a business owner and they're uncertain, this is the last job role. At present, they're global. So they've got South African for content creation, they've got content writers in South Africa, but they've got Vietnamese video editors, they've got Filipino virtual assistants, they've got some in, let's say, Bangladesh and some in India. So from a point of view of from staffing, it's over 10 different countries. What about management of that? Would you want that to be local? Does it not really matter? Are they got to be English speaking? Are they like in your opinion, where is best from a management standpoint? Or can they be in the Philippines? Can a Filipino speak to a South African? South African speak to people from Eastern Europe? Like, what would you have from a management point of view of these virtual assistants?
Yeah, I generally feel that management is a global aspect, right? There's often different cultural nuances. So if you're managing a Filipino, they might react a little different than if you manage a South African, right? But having leaders and having managers in your company, again, that's a growth opportunity, right? What I always say is remote management exposes bad managers. And what I mean with that is there's certain things, if you have a manager that's, I mean, not horrific, but not very good, they can sometimes get away with certain things when it's in person. Whereas the second you go remote and a lot of that natural communication ceases to happen, the manager have to drive the communication. And if they're not having good management skills around communication, then that's going to get exposed really quickly, and you'll see very easily what a bad manager does. So, for example, around COVID, I had a ton of companies really come to me and say, "Hey, we had managers, things were going well. Now we're all remote, so we're assuming remote doesn't work." And I'm like, "Nope, remote works very well. My companies have all been remote for the last 10 some years, but you need to upskill your managers." Actually, the sign that happened here when you went remote and things went to shit, that's a great indication that your managers have not had good management training on how to be a good manager, right? So obviously time zone wise, making sure that there's at least some level of overlap makes sense. But sometimes I think there can be big benefits also by having people that are of a different culture. So if we take the Philippines as example, I'm working with a lot of clients where they have a Filipino team, they have Filipino management, and they often struggle to get the highest level of performance out of them because it often becomes very Filipino. It often becomes very, oh yeah, we understand. The pressure maybe goes down a little bit, right? Whereas I think sometimes with remote management, there is definitely more skill set required from a manager to do it. But if you have good managers, if they've had good management training, they can often get better outputs, right?
Yeah, for sure. So if there's a business owner here and they are looking to do their next hire and they're looking to go, do you know what? I'm going to go down the route. I've always hired local. I'm going to make it global. I'm going to look for virtual assistants, which can save you money. But like you've spoke about, it's about the return on investment for each employee that's being kind of hired. Is it best for someone to reach out to you to Aristo Sourcing, which is kind of a recruitment company you can go out and find these, or would you recommend them reaching out to Mad Singer's consultancy to start with for you to understand what's the best way? Because obviously you've got the two different businesses there. What's the best way of reaching out to start with if they're not certain what the best kind of role is?
Yeah, we have a great team at Aristo Sourcing, right? So if you go to Aristo Sourcing, set up a call with them, they will help and guide a lot, right? So we have a very good team in place to really help people through that, help identify the roles, making sure it's the right type of roles, and so on, right? Again, there's many companies out there. I mean, it doesn't have to be Aristo Sourcing specifically. There's many good recruitment companies out there. But my focus generally, what I tell people is never hire until you're confident someone can do the job. So I see sometimes people use recruitment companies. They send them 3 people or 5 people, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's the best." My first question to them is the person good enough? And they're like, "Well, I hope so." I'm like, if you're not confident they're good enough, don't hire them, right? So it doesn't matter if you do it. Just because someone else recommends something to you, they don't necessarily know the job in the level of detail you know, or they don't know your company as well as you do. So from a company standpoint, you want to be confident that it is the right hire, right? So, but yeah, people can definitely reach out to aristosourcing.com and set up a call with the team, and they'll get some fantastic free guidance.
Perfect. I appreciate having you on, Mads. And if anyone is watching this and you are struggling to maybe take that next step, if you've only got local staff and you don't have anyone overseas, you don't have any virtual assistants being set up to help you scale the business out, let us know in the comment section why that is. What's stopping you from going global? There's a lot of talent. If you go more from just being in the local area to a global area, you've got a pool of so many more people that could be doing specific roles. But I want to know what your main pain points are of not doing that. Appreciate having you, Mads. See you again soon.
Cheers.